The stars shimmered beyond the tribunal dome, a curtain of eternal witness to the proceedings below. The air inside the chamber was unnaturally still, like the moment before a storm breaks. Charged, breathless, hundreds of beings filled the vast, ring-shaped auditorium, seated in tiers that curve around a central platform. Their silhouettes were varied, some towering and insectoid, others compact and serpentine, a few fluid in form and color, but all watched in the same tense silence. Leora Vale stepped into the center. Her golden uniform caught the chamber's ambient light, sharp against the black floor. Her boots struck the polished obsidian with confidence she didn't entirely feel, echoing as she approached the lone podium. Her back was straight, hands relaxed at her sides, every inch of her speaking calm control. Inside, she was cataloging variables, expressions, posture, breath rates, blinking patterns. The room's atmosphere was thick with contempt. Directly across from her, standing high upon the dais, was the Arbiter Prime. His skin was a shade of cobalt at dusk, smooth and metallic. Two glowing eyes burned like twin suns under the shadow of his ornate hood. His arms were raised now, in an almost ceremonial pose, fingers splayed, voice resonant and terrible. By the authority of the five accordances and the sovereign code of sentience, he intoned, humanity stands accused of crimes against galactic harmony. No outcry followed. This wasn't debate. It was a foregone conclusion dressed in ritual. Leora knew it, and judging from the tight expressions on the faces surrounding her, many others did too. This was not a trial. It was a performance. Still, she bowed her head with measured grace. The Earth Cooperative recognizes a tribunal, she said clearly, her voice amplified not by technology, but by the perfect acoustics engineered into the chamber, and submits to its process. But we do not accept the inevitability of its verdict. A flicker, barely perceptible, passed through the crowd. Skepticism, perhaps, or surprise. Earth rarely defied the narrative. In the past, its envoys had offered apology, groveling explanation, concessions. That era was over. Leora Vale wasn't selected for diplomacy. She was chosen because she understood war, and because she hated it. A voice clicked from the left, a smooth, synthetic modulation. The representative of Sector 12, the Coronai Enclave, charges that humanity has engaged in systemic ecological annihilation across 6 border moons. Came the formal reading. Genetic contamination, mining beyond treaty limits, and failure to prevent autonomous weapons spillover into neutral space. A ripple of murmurs swept through the gallery. Leora stood unmoved. Her data had prepared her for these exact allegations. What the tribunal didn't know, or perhaps didn't care to know, was that the Coronai had staged 2 of those incidents themselves. She turned slightly, eyes finding the bulbous, spiral form of Counselor Drix, the Coronai representative. His eye stalks twitched. Guilty, she thought. Not of lying, every faction lied, but of believing he'd already won. The Arbiter spoke again, voice lower now. A warning. The charge is not singular. Across the Orion sectors, Earth's influence has grown rapidly. Technologically, economically, and culturally. In defiance of protocol. In contempt of caution. So that was it. Not the moons. Not the mines. Influence. This trial, the Arbiter continued, shall determine whether the species known as Homo sapiens has violated the tenets of cooperative sentience. If found guilty, Earth will be placed under diplomatic isolation and technological stasis for 3 generations. Gasps followed that. Even among Earth's rivals, the punishment was severe. Leora felt her jaw tighten. Stasis meant paralysis. 3 generations would cripple not only Earth, but its entire network of colonies, allies, and codependencies. It would erase them from relevance. The prosecution will deliver its first account tomorrow, the Arbiter concluded. You may address the tribunal, Ambassador Vale. She stepped forward. I will speak, she said, but not to plead. Again, a flicker of surprise. She scanned the crowd, letting her voice cool, not rise. You say Earth's reach grows fast, that we expand too quickly, too confidently. Perhaps you're right. We have made mistakes, sometimes costly ones, but we are not the first to rise. We are not the first to stumble. Nor are we the only ones to change the rules when we begin to win by them. A subtle shift. Interest now. A few lean forward. You see our aggression, but you ignore what we've learned. We did not arrive at this tribunal with demands. We came with data, with transparency, with our backs against the wall. Not because we are guilty, but because we are new, and because we refuse to be controlled. She paused, holding the silence, letting the words settle. I request full access to all evidence to be presented. I request a right to cross-examine witnesses. And I request that this tribunal remember its own history before it condemns ours. Then she bowed just slightly and returned to the central platform's neutral zone. Across the chamber, several voices murmured. Counselor Avon of the Tanari Confederation narrowed her eyes, bird-like head tilting in curiosity. The Viewer-off speaker, a being of liquid mercury, pulsed with slow approval. Leora caught sight of one human face in the crowd, Admiral Ross, her old mentor. He gave the smallest nod. Reassurance, perhaps, or farewell. Her lodging that night was within the tribunal's diplomatic wing. It was Spartan, carved into the rock of the asteroid itself, but comfortable. She activated her privacy field and sank onto a low couch, eyes closing for a moment. In 20 hours, the galaxy would try to put Earth in chains, and if she failed, they would succeed. She opened the encrypted case beside her and removed a small, translucent prism. Inside it swirled red and gold like a captured flame, the record of what really happened on Archeon 9, the key to the whole thing. But it wasn't time to play that card. Not yet. She would let them speak first, let them commit, and then she would burn their lies to the ground. With the storm closing in, Leora smiled to herself, not from joy, but from readiness, because sometimes justice wasn't given. Sometimes it had to be taken. When the tribunal reconvened, the chamber felt colder. Gone was the ceremonial grandeur of the opening session. This was not spectacle. It was execution. The audience had thinned slightly, though every sector remained represented. Above them, the chamber lights dimmed until all that remained was the illumination of the central floor, where the prosecution's platform now dominated. A new figure stepped forward, Chancellor Myrick of the Aurelian Triad. His skin shimmered like polished copper, and his voice, when it came, was smooth as oil and twice as hard to wash away. Esteemed delegates, he began, the charges we present are not born of bias nor fear. They are fact, recorded, and verified. Humanity has acted recklessly, selfishly, and with flagrant disregard for interstellar law. The galaxy welcomed Earth into its fold. Earth responded with fire. He gestured, and a large holographic array appeared above him. It displayed a rotation of vivid, brutal imagery, collapsed biospheres, orbital debris fields, scorched settlements. No context, just damage. Zorinus, he said, nodding to an image of a once lush moon, now a barren husk. Human mining drones stripped its core minerals in less than a cycle. The result? Total ecosystem collapse. Local life forms extinct. Indigenous population displaced. Another slide flickered into place. Archeon 9, a weaponized AI breach, originating from Earth's colonial network, resulted in a cascade event across 3 systems. Billions of credits in damages. 50,000 lives lost. Leora didn't flinch. The AI breach was real, but it hadn't started with Earth. And what Myrick wasn't saying was that it had been Earth's response teams that stopped it. The third image was grainy, military footage from a battle-scarred outpost. Human Marines engaged in combat. A drone's timestamp in the corner. Shouts. Explosions. A figure collapsing. A clear violation of the non-intervention mandate, Myrick said, his tone dripping with restrained fury. Earth's military intervened in a civil conflict on a sovereign world, arming a political faction in exchange for mineral rights. This was not peacekeeping. This was conquest by proxy. Around the chamber, murmurs bloomed into uneasy chatter. Leora stood still, absorbing each blow in silence. She needed the tribunal to hear it all. Let the poison spread first, then bring the cure. Myrick stepped back. These are not isolated incidents. They are a pattern. One that speaks to a culture of expansionism unchecked by accountability. He didn't need to say the rest aloud. Earth was dangerous. Earth was out of control. Earth didn't belong. The Arbiter turned his gaze to Leora. You may respond in time, Ambassador. But for now, we recognize the Coronai Enclave. Counselor Drix slithered forward on 4 scale limbs, voice wet and serpentine. We warned you, he hissed. When the humans first petitioned for entry into the accordances, we warned you. Their appetites would outpace their ethics. Now they spread to the stars like a plague. Leora turned slightly, just enough to meet his gaze. Yet your trade agreements with Earth tripled in the last cycle. A hum passed through the gallery. Drix recoiled, then quickly veiled his reaction. Economic entanglement does not excuse moral decay, nor does it erase your violations. Agreed, she replied evenly. Let's then examine all violations. Equally, the Arbiter raised a hand for silence. You will have your opportunity to counter, Ambassador. For now, we proceed. The remainder of the session was a slow grind of accusation and insinuation. Each speaker, from various factions, added another pebble to the growing avalanche. Earth's corporate influence in neutral zones, cultural dominance through neural net entertainment, cybernetic tech proliferation beyond sanctioned limits. Not all voices were hostile, but none rose in Earth's defense. Not yet. After adjournment, Leora remained seated. She let the hall empty around her, absorbing the shape of the war being waged here. It wasn't about justice. It was about containment. Fear. The tribunal didn't hate Earth for its crimes. It hated Earth for what it represented. Outside the chamber, she walked silently alongside Commander Riven, her aide tall, lean, and always alert, his eyes flickering as he received updates through his neural implant. They're painting you into a corner, he said quietly. Classic oversaturation. By the time it's your turn, the room's already primed to dismiss your voice. Let them. The more they talk, the more they give me to use. Riven glanced at her. You have a plan. I have the truth. He didn't smile. Neither did she. They reached the private conference module assigned to Earth's delegation. Inside, the walls shimmered with digital overlays, news feeds, security maps, and a timeline of the trial's progression. Leora tapped the timeline, pulling up data on the Archeon 9 breach. A face appeared on the screen, a young alien technician named Velinjot, a survivor. He had been working at the Neutral AI Research Station when the breach occurred. His testimony had been archived but never submitted. Suppressed. Leora nodded to Riven. Find him. Quietly. If he's still alive, I want him on the next comms burst. Understood. She turned back to the data stream. Every lie, every omission they'd thrown at her, it was all designed to overwhelm. But in their overreach, they'd made a mistake. They hadn't expected her to fight with facts. Later that evening, she received a private summons. The message bore no seal, no name, just coordinates within the diplomatic wing. Caution was a given, but curiosity overrode it. The room was dim, lit only by a translucent globe in its center. Inside stood a figure cloaked in shadows, tall and androgynous, skin like pearl carved in smoke. Ambassador Vale, the figure said without turning. You speak well, but speaking may not be enough. Leora narrowed her eyes. Who are you? Someone who has watched tribunals for centuries, and someone who dislikes foregone conclusions. A sympathizer? A realist? Earth's fate was sealed the moment it exceeded expectations. The tribunal doesn't punish failure, Ambassador. It punishes audacity. Leora stepped closer, voice low. Then why summon me? To remind you that truth alone does not win trials. Power does. Influence. Leverage. And you're offering me some? A pause. I'm offering you perspective. Tomorrow you speak. Don't waste time denying every charge. Show them what they truly fear. That Earth is not broken. That Earth is learning. And that Earth is not alone. The figure turned at last, eyes gleaming silver. You have allies, Vale. Some just don't know it yet. The room dimmed, and the figure was gone. Leora stood alone with the echo of that final word. Allies. She returned to her quarters, sat before the mirror, and stared at her reflection. They had thrown their worst at her. Now it was her turn. Tomorrow, she would not defend Earth. She would dismantle the prosecution, piece by piece. And in doing so, she would remind the tribunal of something they had forgotten, that humanity, for all its flaws, had never bowed easily. The chamber's silence was a living thing when Leora Vale took the floor. Her heels clicked softly against the polished obsidian, the sound echoing through the hall like a metronome counting down to detonation. The delegates were watching, some with weary eyes, others with sharpened focus. They had already heard the charges. They expected rebuttals. They expected weakness, or worse, excuses. Leora gave them neither. "Esteemed members of the tribunal," she began, voice calm and unwavering, "I will not waste your time refuting each accusation, not because they are accurate, but because they are incomplete." That drew the first shift in posture, subtle, but enough. She disrupted their rhythm. "Good. You've been shown destruction. You've seen failure. But you haven't been shown context. You haven't been shown what Earth sacrificed to clean up others' mistakes, or how we contained threats we didn't unleash. You've only been shown a shadow of our actions, not the whole form." She gestured to the central holo display. It flickered, then came alive with a slow pan over Archeon 9, before the breach. This was a neutral station, she said, jointly staffed, jointly funded, jointly protected on paper. But when the containment protocols failed, who responded within 17 minutes? The feed accelerated, a human medical vessel appearing above the station, drones launched, crew deployed, Earth's emergency relief fleet, without orders, without compensation. We lost 19 responders in that mission, not mercenaries, volunteers, unarmed, and they succeeded. She paused, let the footage speak. Then the display changed, Velin Jot's testimony. The technician appeared, visibly younger than in the current records. His voice was thin, still strained by trauma. "The breach came from the Coronai side," he said. "A dormant algorithm embedded in a diagnostic tool. No one saw it until it was too late. Earth didn't cause this. They stopped it." Leora let the silence settle again before speaking. This testimony was buried, conveniently, but it still exists, and it still speaks. There was no reaction from the Coronai delegation. Drick stared straight ahead, face unreadable. "Now," she continued, regarding Zerinus, "you've been shown a devastated moon, and that part is true. What you weren't told is that Earth halted extraction once the anomaly was detected. Our mining ceased immediately, and reparations were initiated. The biosphere collapse was not due to negligence, but a previously unknown tectonic fault destabilized by natural processes. Independent geologists, non-human, have confirmed this." Another image emerged, a report co-signed by 3 separate species. She let that hang in the air. "You don't have to like us," she said. "You don't have to trust us. But if you're going to judge us, judge the full story." From the seats, murmurs began, measured, curious, uncertain. "Let me be clear," Leora added. "Earth is not blameless. We've made mistakes. But tell me which of your worlds entered the stars without stumbling? Which of your nations never exploited a resource, never made a miscalculation, never interfered for gain masked as diplomacy?" A few heads turned away. Others narrowed their eyes. Leora took a breath. She could feel the weight of their attention shifting, if only slightly. "But this tribunal isn't really about justice," she said, voice lowering like a sharpened blade sliding from its sheath. "It's about fear. Fear that humanity has done, in a few centuries, what took others millennia. That we've adapted faster, pushed farther, dreamed louder." She stepped closer to the central dais. "You call us aggressive, but we call it survival. You say we're reckless. We call it risk. You say we're disruptive. We call it evolution." The arbiter tilted his head, inscrutable. Leora met his gaze without flinching. "And I understand your fear. Earth is difficult. We are unruly. But we are also resilient. You think we want conquest? No. We want place. Not to dominate, but to belong." The holo display shifted again. A final image of Earth slowly rotating in the dark. Blue, cloud veil battered but vibrant. "This is what we fight for," she said softly. "Not dominion, not resource. Home, and the future of those born there." She turned toward the delegates now, addressing them as peers. "We don't ask you to forget our errors, only to see them in full light, to understand we are not finished, we are still becoming." The room was still. No eruption, no applause, just the tight, coiled stillness of shifting fault lines beneath the city. And then the arbiter spoke. "Your defense is noted, Ambassador Vale." She gave a curt bow, stepped back, and returned to her seat. Riven was waiting, face unreadable. "That didn't win them," he said, barely above a whisper. "It wasn't meant to," she replied. "It was meant to make them doubt." As the chamber cleared, a figure approached, tall, lean, silver robes, insignia unfamiliar. He walked with quiet purpose, then leaned slightly toward her. "You made them listen. That's the first breach." He pressed something into her hand. A small crystalline shard, data encoded. "What is this?" she asked. "More truth," he said, eyes glinting. "Use it wisely." He was gone before she could ask his name. Later, in the shadows of her quarters, Leora activated the shard. Files unfolded, logs, communications, suppressed incident reports, evidence that Earth had not merely been framed, but that multiple powers had manipulated events to orchestrate this tribunal. And not just for punishment, for control. She stared at the data as it flooded her screen. The trial was never about Earth alone. It was about reshaping the balance of power in the galaxy. And she wasn't just Earth's last offense. She was now its counteroffensive. The chamber's silence was a living thing without when Leora Vale took the floor. Just a gradual brightening of artificial against the polished obsidian. And the awakening murmur of life echoing through the hall, like Leora Vale counting down the detonation alcove. The delegates were watching, not on the stars, some with weary reflection, in others with sharpened focus. She hadn't already heard not the truly, not since she decoded the shard. Behind her weakness, Riven approached quietly. Excuses. He held a slim tablet. Leora gave them flicking through data. Esteemed members of the tribunal, they're moving to expedite a vote. Voice calm and unwavering. Coronai and Aurelians push waste your time refuting each accusation. They're expecting a resolution, not because they are accurate, but because they're incomplete. Leora murmured. That drew the first shift in posture. Strike fast while the narrative still holds. She disrupted their rhythm. They want her sanctioned. Good. Trade and been shown destruction. Restricted space travel, but you haven't been shown diplomatic isolation. You haven't been shown more than sacrifice to clean up others' mistakes, or how we can reshaping the alliance. Unleash. Earth was. You've only been shown a shadow of our actions, not the whole. Riven hesitated. She gestured to the central holo display. She didn't answer immediately, then came alive with a slow pan over. She walked back toward her console before the breach. The data was still open. This was a neutral station. Intercepted transmissions, jointly staffed. Strategic meeting notes scrubbed jointly protected on paper. Coordinated manipulations between protocols rival factions who responded with an orchestrated campaign to pin Earth down while they consolidated power behind the scenes. A human medical vessel don't have a choice above the station, she finally said. Drones launched. They built a story around deployed. I'm going to emergency relief fleet. Without Riven nodded without compensation. I've triple verified 19 responders in that mission. It's clean, not mercenaries. If we broadcast it, volunteers. It'll hit every delegation node, and they succeeded. 30 seconds. She paused. She turned to speak. Then prepared the display changed. Velen Jot's testimony. The tribunal reconvened, visibly younger than in the current record. This was the final phase. His voice was thin. The deliberation still strained by formality. The breach came from the Coronai side. Ceremonial sashes, a dormant algorithm expressions embedded in a diagnostic tool. The arbiter loomed above until it was too late. Still cloaked in impartiality. They stopped the weight of inevitability. Leora let the silence settle like ion smoke before speaking. Chancellor Myrick's testimony was varied. The evidence is abundant, but it still exists, unmistakable, and it still speaks. Earth's presence in the accordance is no reaction from the Coronai delegation. For peace to endure, Drick stared straight ahead. Recalibration is required. Face unreadable. He said it with such sterile elegance. She continued. It nearly sounded benevolent. Leora shown a devastated moon. Not yet. And that part is Counselor true. Drick's followed. What you weren't told. Let history not halted extraction cycles. Once the anomaly. The tribunal must act decisively. Our mining ceased immediately, not merely to punish, and reparations were initiated. A dozen the bias voice collapse was not due to negligence, but a
measured,
previously unknown tectonic fault destabilized by natural processes.
And the vote loomed.
Independent geologists,
Finally,
non-human,
the arbiter's gaze
turned toward Leora.
Another image
Ambassador
emerged.
Vale,
A report
co-signed by 3
proceeds.
separate species.
Do you have a
She
final
let that
statement?
hang in the air.
She rose
You don't have to
slowly,
like us,
walked to the platform,
she said,
and waited
you don't
for
have
silence.
to trust us.
This
But if you're
tribunal,
gonna judge us,
she began,
judge the full story.
was never about truth.
From the seats,
it was about
murmurs
control.
began, measured,
The
curious,
room bristled.
uncertain. Subtle
Let me be
ripples
clear.
of offense and
Leora
intrigue
added,
spreading like
Earth
fractures
is not
under
blameless.
pressure. You
We've
were
made
shown
mistakes.
only what they wanted you
But
to see.
tell me which of your
partial
worlds
truths
entered the stars
amplified
without
errors.
stumbling?
Real events
Which of your
twisted
nations
into
never
a weapon.
exploited a resource?
But now, I showed
never
you what
made a
they hid.
miscalculation.
She
Never
nodded.
interfered for
Ryven
gain
mastered
mastered burst.
diplomacy.
A ripple
A
of
few
light
heads turned
surged
away.
through the gallery walls.
Others narrowed their eyes.
Delegates checked their consoles
Leora
as
took a
files
breath.
auto-deployed.
She could feel the weight of their attention
Timestamp
shifting.
communications between
If
virus
only
and
slightly.
Drix.
Agreements
But this
forged in
tribunal
shadow.
isn't really about justice.
Incidents manipulated
She
to
said,
trigger
voice
outrage
lowering
at
like a
precise
sharpened
moments.
blade sliding
Layer
from the
upon
sheath.
layer of intent
It's about
disguised
fear.
as coincidence.
Fear that humanity
The
has
room
done
fell still.
in a few
Earth was
centuries
targeted,
what took others
she
millennia.
continued.
That we
Not
adapted
because we are
faster,
monstrous,
pushed
but because
farther,
we are
dreamed
inconvenient.
louder, because we
She
grow
stepped
faster,
closer to the central
think
dais.
faster.
You
Innovate
call us
beyond
aggressive,
permission,
but we call it survival.
She turned to the council.
You say we're reckless.
You fear that Earth
We
would
call it
disrupt
risk.
the balance of power.
You say we're
But
disruptive.
what you truly
We
fear
call it
was that we might
evolution.
inspire others
The
to
arbiter
rise
tilted
faster
his
than the
head.
structures allow.
Inscrutable.
The
Leora
arbiter
met
raised
his
a
gaze
hand,
without flinching.
but she pressed
And
on.
I understand your fear.
You accuse us
Earth
of
is
interfering.
difficult,
but
we
look
are
now.
unruly.
See
But
who
we
truly
are also
interferes.
resilient.
See
You
who
think we
works
want
justice
conquest?
not to preserve peace,
No,
but to
we want
maintain
place.
dominion.
Not to
Myrick
dominate,
stood
but to
abruptly,
belong.
voice
The
tight
holo
with a strained
display
fury.
shifted again.
This is a
A
fabrication,
final image,
an
of
act
Earth,
of desperation.
slowly rotating
Then let
in
the
dark.
delegates examine the
Blue,
data.
cloud veil,
Leora said
battered but
calmly,
vibrant.
Trace
This
the
is what we
encryption.
fight for.
Confirm
She
the
said
sources.
softly. We
Not
welcome
dominion.
scrutiny, not
Because we are
resource.
not afraid
Home.
of truth.
And the future
Silence
was born
thickened.
there.
Drix
She
no
turned
longer
toward the
spoke.
delegates now.
His scaled hands
addressing them as
trembled
peers.
as he stared at his
We don't
personal
ask you
terminal.
to forget our errors.
The arbiter finally
only to
broke
see them
the
in
hush.
full light.
There will be
To
a
understand
recess.
we are not finished.
All data
we are
will
still
be
verified.
verified. The
room was
tribunal
still
will reconvene.
No eruption.
But Leora knew.
No applause.
The tide had
Just
shifted.
a tight, coiled
Hours
stillness
later,
of shifting fault
in the privacy
lines
of
beneath the
Earth's
city.
chamber.
And
Ryven
then the
let out a
arbiter
breath
spoke.
he'd been holding
Your
all
defense
day.
is noted.
We may have just
Ambassador
turned the
Vale.
tide of galactic politics.
She gave a curt bow.
Leora
Stepped back,
remained quiet,
and returned to her
Her
seat.
eyes didn't gleam
Ryven
with
was
triumph,
waiting.
only
Face
clarity.
unreadable.
We
That
didn't
didn't
win
win
them,
them,
he said. She said,
barely above a
We just
whisper.
stopped losing.
It wasn't meant to.
A tone chimed
she
at the
replied.
door.
It
A
was
message
meant to make
delivered
them
by
doubt.
drone.
As
Sealed
the
with
chamber
a marked
cleared,
arbiter.
a figure
Leora
approached.
opened it.
Tall,
The tribunal
lean,
would
silver
reconvene not
robed,
for a vote,
insignia
but for review.
unfamiliar.
Earth
He
status
walked
was
with
no
quiet
longer under
purpose.
threat.
Then
In
leaned
fact,
slightly toward her.
several factions
You
had
made them
requested
listen.
bilateral talks.
That's the first breach.
The tone was suddenly
He
collaborative.
pressed something into her hand.
Ryven leaned back.
A small crystalline
blinking.
shard. Data
So what now?
encoded.
We
What
go
is
home.
this? She
No,
asked.
she said.
More truth.
We stay?
He said, eyes
Earth
glinting.
needs allies.
Use it wisely.
And now,
More
he
than
was gone
ever,
before
others
she
will
could
come
ask his
forward.
name.
Worlds
Later,
tired of being silent
in the shadows
under
of
powerful
quarters.
shadows.
Leora
They'll want
activated
someone
the
who
shard.
proved it's possible.
Files
to speak.
unfolded. Logs,
She stepped again to the
communications,
viewing glass.
suppressed instant
Stars
reports.
now clearer beyond
Evidence
the
that
structural
Earth had
field.
not merely been
In
framed.
saving ourselves,
but
we
that
lit a
multiple
fire.
powers had
Her
manipulated
reflection
events to
stared
orchestrate
back.
this tribunal.
Not just a diplomat
and
now,
not just for
but a
punishment,
reckoning.
for control.
And fires.
She
said
stared at the
softly,
data
as
as
it
it flooded her
spread.
screen. The trial was never about Earth alone. It was about reshaping the balance of power in the galaxy. And she wasn't just Earth's last offense. She was now its counteroffensive.